Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Welcome to AFC North Championship Sunday, Steelers Nation. It's a big one tonight, Steelers versus Ravens for the AFC North crown and a trip to the NFL playoffs and a home playoff game on the line this evening at Acrisure Stadium. Ponzi and I will be live in studio later today. 2 hours before kickoff, we'll be going live at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. About 2 hours of pregame coverage, followed by live play-by-play and game analysis. We'll react to the game together tonight, and then, of course, we'll have our post-game reaction show. Hopefully, we're celebrating an AFC North Championship for the first time in a half-decade tonight. Otherwise, we'll be discussing about another late-season collapse for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we will certainly be reacting to that as well. So if you guys want to join the largest Steelers watch party for Steelers versus Ravens here on YouTube tonight, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Join the Steelers Talk family today, and whether the Steelers win or lose, we're going to have a bunch of great content ready for you guys all throughout this next week. So make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. But I wanted to get in front of a camera here today, guys, as we get ready for the final regular season NFL Sunday of the year. Man, these seasons always go by super quickly, but, obviously today's a big one. And this is the one that we've had circled on our calendars, since the beginning of the season, where we said, the division or a playoff berth or something of that kind might come down to Steelers-Ravens at Acrisure Stadium in the season finale. And for better or for worse, you had an opportunity to get a win last week and lock up the division versus a 3-win football team, but without DK Metcalf, without Darnell Washington, going up against a top 3, if not top 5, passing defense in the league in a game where you had to pass the ball a lot. Obviously, you couldn't get the job done in Cleveland, so you got to do it tonight against the Baltimore Ravens. And, the stakes just simply couldn't be higher for these two teams. And, depending on whether the Steelers win tonight's game or lose tonight's game is going to completely change the way that Steelers fans and, people outside of the building as well and outside the fandom are going to look at this Steelers season. Because if the Steelers win today, there's a lot of positivity coming out of tonight. Obviously, the Ravens ended the Steelers season last year in the playoffs, and tonight the Steelers have an opportunity to return the favor. They have the opportunity now to be able to end the Baltimore Ravens season tonight and win the division. Also, if the Steelers win tonight and win the division for the first time in a half decade, obviously, it's their first division championship in the last 5 years, and also it's going to be their first home playoff game in a half decade as well. So that would be a positive, but also this would mean a win tonight would mean the third straight 10-win season and playoff berth under head coach Mike Tomlin. So, with maybe what I would classify as maybe adequate, but certainly not high-end quarterback play, certainly not high-end offensive production these last 3 years, getting to 10 wins and getting, 3 wins over 500. I know Mike Tomlin, the meme around him is, he goes 9-8, he's a 9-8 merchant, all this different stuff. But they've only been 9-8 once in their entire history, right? And now if they lose tonight, obviously they'll be 9-8. But if they win tonight, that is their third straight 10-win season and playoff berth. It's not easy to go 3 wins over 500. Especially when you don't have a top 10 level quarterback, and the Steelers haven't had one of those in a while. And obviously Tomlin has, a role to play in the team not getting their next franchise quarterback. But, 10-win seasons are not easy things to get. And if the Steelers win a game tonight here, and get to that third straight 10-win season, that would be pretty impressive on the part of head coach Mike Tomlin, in my opinion. But also, if the Steelers win tonight, some Steelers history will be made, as head coach Mike Tomlin will tie Chuck Noll for the most wins in Steelers history from a head coach. And obviously Tomlin, in the grand scheme of things, I know he's the most, the longest tenured head coach in the NFL right now. And actually the longest tenured head coach in American professional sports at 19 years with the same team. But, in the grand scheme of things, there's some, head coaches that don't even get their first opportunity to be a head coach until they're Tomlin's age. So Mike is actually, you can argue that he is kind of in his prime as an NFL head coach. And, his career And maybe isn't just getting started, but it's certainly it certainly has some traction in terms of the years that he could still spend as a head coach in the National Football League. So if the Steelers win today, man, you're winning, a huge game in front of a national audience at home in a playoff environment versus your division rivals that ended your season last year. You get some much needed revenge, all that different stuff. The vibes will be very positive tonight. But if you lose tonight, it couldn't get any worse for the Pittsburgh Steelers in terms of the vibes surrounding this team and heading into the offseason, because it would mean that Pittsburgh would fail to secure the division this year in its most open season in years. I mean, Baltimore obviously has gone through their struggles this year. They've had Lamar Jackson injured. They haven't played their best football. They've been as vulnerable as they've ever been in recent seasons. Cincinnati was missing Joe Burrow for most of the season and had a terrible defense. So obviously, they were out of it. Cleveland was Cleveland this year. So this was as open of a division as Pittsburgh could have expected. And if they fail to secure the division this year, why would we expect the Steelers to win the division in future seasons? Or at least that will be the narrative coming out of tonight's game if the Steelers lose. But also it'd be the second straight season under Mike Tomlin where there's a late season collapse. Now, obviously a 2-game losing streak to finish your season, not exactly the same as a 5-game losing streak to end your season like it was last year. I think that there's a built-in excuse for this year's quote-unquote 2-game collapse or whatever it would be called because of the DK Metcalf suspension. But it doesn't make it sting any less where, you're going into that Browns game in week 17 with over a 90% chance to make the playoffs, according to whatever metrics you wanted to look at. And if you end up not making the playoffs after having those kinds of odds, it would really, really sting. There's no question about that. And to have that level of hurt 2 seasons in a row at the end of the year, it's going to spark a lot of outrage and a lot of calling for Mike Tomlin's job, let's call it, if the Steelers lose tonight. It'll probably fall on deaf ears. I think whether the Steelers win or lose, Mike Tomlin will be back next year. But, there certainly will be that outrage if the Steelers lose tonight. And then also, if the Steelers lose tonight, that means that it will officially be the 9th straight season here in Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin without a playoff victory. And obviously this has been, a big topic of discussion here in Pittsburgh for many seasons. How can the Steelers get back into not only the playoffs, but to win playoff games and put themselves in contention to win Super Bowls again? And they've been kind of stuck in place for a very long time here, especially since they haven't had a top 10 level quarterback in prime Big Ben Roethlisberger. When Ben was getting older, he was no longer a top 10 guy, in my opinion, especially when we got to the end of the season. He would deteriorate, his body would, by the end of seasons. And then, you've had a bunch of different quarterbacks go in there, and they've been able to make the playoffs with these kind of, bottom, 10 level quarterbacks in the past, which is in one sense impressive, but on the other sense, it's like, why are we keep bringing in quarterbacks that are ineffective and aren't, up to the level and to the standard that we have here as Steelers fans? So it kind of feels like last year's playoff game to me, where like if you win, it's like positive vibes. Quarterback, is going to be welcome back next year. Division championship is going to be huge. All that different stuff, positivity. But if you lose this game against the Ravens, it's going to be tough to be a Steelers fan tomorrow morning. So. Certainly the stakes are high tonight, but this is exactly where I love to be as a Steelers fan. This is why I wake up every single day, guys, and I cover the Pittsburgh Steelers, is because I live for games like this, just like the players and coaches live and train for games like this, where it's high stakes. It's the ultimate form of live theater, in my opinion. And I know a lot of Steelers fans, get anxious about games like this, all this different stuff, and sometimes they even dread games like this. But for me, man, I love these types of ball games. I love, high stakes football. It doesn't get any better than this. And, I'm definitely going to be moving throughout the afternoon and evening tonight with a lot of gratitude, for being a Steelers fan and being able to enjoy, high stakes football at this level, at this point in the season. Because, it certainly beats being 3 wins or 4 wins and, having your season be over midway through the season. And, even if the Steelers lose tonight, I'm gonna reflect on this season and be grateful, not necessarily for losing the play, not making the playoffs or going 9-8. Those aren't the things I'll be grateful for. I'll be grateful for, definitely what has been an intriguing and frankly entertaining season. It certainly has kept us on our toes, and I'm hoping it doesn't end tonight. But certainly this has been another adventure here in Steelers Nation, and every single year I'm grateful for the experiences that we have here on Steelers Talk. But diving a little bit more here into the game itself, 5 things that I think are going to be the keys to the game tonight for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 1, can the Steelers contain King Henry? That's going to be the number 1 thing, because if he's running for 150 plus yards in this game, like he did in the playoff game last year, by the way, the chances of the Steelers winning are going to be very close to 0, in my opinion. You're going to have to limit not only him, but Keaton Mitchell and their other running backs. That was actually part of the issue the last time we played the Ravens back in Week 14, is that Keaton Mitchell went off for a couple big runs. Derrick Henry, on 25 carries, had less than 100 yards last time, and that was without Derek Harmon. So I actually think the Steelers, with Derek Harmon, with the way that their run defense is played, they've given up less than 100 rushing yards the last 3 games, and I think that they are built right now at this point in the season to be able to stop a Derrick Henry and force Lamar Jackson to be the reason why the Ravens win tonight. And speaking of Lamar Jackson, which version of Lamar do we get tonight? Do we get the version where he's the MVP and he's running around and he's making plays? He claims that he's as healthy as he's been all season long. This was the first week in a long time where he was a full participant in practice every single day during the week. So, that would certainly indicate that Lamar is as healthy as he's been all season. Or do we get the version of Lamar that's still, a little bit hurt? Do we get the version of Lamar that hasn't played well against the Pittsburgh Steelers, pretty much throughout his career, if Derrick Henry isn't carrying him to a victory? It's going to be interesting to see what version of Lamar we get tonight. And how well the Steelers defense as a whole, which has played really good football over the last month, how do they hold up on the biggest of stages with everything on the line? The defense will have to be a big reason why the Steelers win tonight, in my opinion. But then moving over to the other side of the ball, another key to victory and a key to the game tonight is, what does the Steelers do with the run game? How efficient are they? How much do they prioritize it? Because this has been an offense led by Aaron Rodgers that has thrown the ball quite a bit. Right now, they're top 10 in the National Football League in pass percentage, despite the fact that they're not even in the top 20 in EPA per play and success rate when passing the football. But when they're running the football, they're top 5 in both of those metrics. So they're very efficient as a run team, and that's really what the strength of this team is this year. But with Aaron Rodgers being the captain of the ship, getting the team into the quote-unquote right play, he's choosing to throw the ball more than probably I would want him to throw it. I would want, especially with DK Metcalf out of this game, I would want the Steelers to prioritize the run, and whatever form that takes formationally. And I know there's been some people that have suggested the Steelers should put 7 offensive linemen out there, and we've seen Spencer Anderson, Andrews Pete, those guys get work. And now with Isaac Seumalo being brought back into the fold here, you could go out there with a formation where you've got Dylan Cook, Isaac Seumalo, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, Troy Fautanu, Andrews Pete, and Spencer Anderson, and have kind of like a massive jumbo package and just go heavy and attack Baltimore's nickel defense. And kind of force them to play bigger. You could do that. You could go with that strategy, or you could, still continue to do the 11 personnel stuff. Something that has really bothered me about the Steelers offense, or that bothered me last week about the Steelers offense, is that it kind of seemed like they were like, oh, we're going to run the same exact offense we run with DK, only we're going to put MVS in DK's spot, and we're going to give him DK's targets. And it's like, that's just not the way it should work, man. You lose a player with the significance of DK Metcalf, you've got to change some things up in the passing game, and you got to change the way that you attack opposing defenses in the passing game. You can't just replace DK Metcalf with MVS and expect the offense to be perfectly fine. So based on some of Mike Tomlin's comments this week and talking about how if you have red paint, you got to paint the barn red, stuff like that, it tells me that they are going to switch some things up schematically and change some things up maybe formationally on offense tonight. And it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. Obviously, the stakes are very, very high. to be doing something new this late into the season. But on the other hand, you're playing a team in the Baltimore Ravens that's very familiar with what you normally do and could be caught off guard if the Steelers end up executing, some new stuff very effectively tonight. So I think Jaylen Warren, Kenny Gainwell got to be a big part of it. But also, does somebody emerge in this wide receiver room as a deep threat? Does somebody emerge as somebody that can, catch a deep pass? Last time against Baltimore, Calvin Austin III hit a fade, was able to catch a fade for a big gain. He's back in the lineup tonight. Can he make a big impact in this football game? Does Roman Wilson get in there? Does MVS finally turn it on and get more than like one big catch in a game? Do they target Pat Freiermuth and Adam Thielen in the intermediate and short areas more? Is that how they attack this defense? I think they're eventually going to have to hit a deep shot or two, and somebody's going to have to emerge as that deep threat with DK Metcalf out of the lineup. But that's going to be a big question tonight for me. And then the final question is, who makes that big play in the fourth quarter? These games usually come down right to the wire. We know the history of this rivalry, man. These teams know each other, and this game usually is within one score, within the final few minutes of the game. So who's going to make that big play? Who's going to put together that big drive? Who gets the big stop? Who gets the big turnover? Who makes the big special teams play? There's going to be a play that needs to be made in the fourth quarter tonight. If the Steelers make it, they win the football game. If they don't make it, they lose the football game. It really is that simple for me, guys. But now I'll finish up today's show with some storylines here surrounding two people that, there's certainly a question mark as to whether or not they will return to the Pittsburgh Steelers next year. We'll start with head coach Mike Tomlin. There's a lot of whispers that, especially if the Steelers lose this football game, that they're going to turn away from Mike Tomlin, or Tomlin's going to walk away from the Steelers and they'll end up trading him or something of that kind. And even though I'm open to that possibility, if Mike wants to move on, I actually think bringing in a new, fresh voice would be very interesting for the Pittsburgh Steelers moving forward. But I'm just going to tell you right now, guys, I kind of doubt that Mike Tomlin will leave the Steelers this next upcoming year. I think the Steelers will probably pick up his 2027 option this offseason. And from Mike Tomlin's point of view, it still sounds like he loves being a part of this organization, man. He loves the high standards that come with being the head coach of the Steelers. I was listening to an interview that he was doing with Tony Dungy for Football Night in America. That was put out yesterday on NBC's YouTube. I would actually highly recommend you check out that interview. But he's talking about the history of the Steelers. He's talking about how he loves the high standards of the fan base. He talks about the people that he's coaching here in Pittsburgh, like Cam Hayward and Aaron Rodgers and TJ Watt, and wanting to deliver for those players. It just doesn't sound like a guy that's ready to leave and is looking to leave the organization. And it seems like every single year we get whispers, Mike Tomlin might leave the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then at the end of the season, within the first couple days of the offseason, he's announcing, I'm coming back. So, especially with Cam Hayward expected to have just one more season before he retires, it doesn't seem to me like it's Mike Tomlin's style to abandon Cam Hayward in Pittsburgh in his final season. It sounds to me like Tomlin wants to deliver for Cam Hayward. Now, maybe when Cam retires next year, that might be the time after 20 seasons and 2 decades here in Pittsburgh. Maybe next year is the time where Mike Tomlin decides to walk away. I think that's a lot more likely than Tomlin walking away this offseason. Especially because Rodgers could come back for another season. It sounds like Aaron is certainly open to coming back for another year. And, with the way he was talking about continuity and wanting to build something with somebody before he retires, it sounds like Pittsburgh is a place that he might want to come back for another season, especially if Mike Tomlin is back. So I would say at this point, it makes probably the most sense. It's probably the most likely that Mike Tomlin is back with this team as its head coach next season for at least one more year, and Aaron Rodgers comes back for one more season as well, and it will be potentially Mike Tomlin, Aaron Rodgers, and Cam Hayward's final season in Pittsburgh next year, but not this year. That's what I would guess. That's my best guess at this point. Anything is possible, but just remember, there's been a lot of whispers surrounding Tomlin the last 2 seasons and off seasons. Remember when Tomlin walked out of the post-game press conference after the playoff game in Buffalo 2 years ago, and everyone thought that meant he was gone? 2 days later, he announces to the team he's coming back. Mike Tomlin loves his job. He loves working for the Steelers. He loves the players that he coaches. And especially with multiple years left on his deal, I just don't think Tomlin is going to walk away. I could be wrong, but that's just the gauge that I have on the situation right now. But my final point that I want to make here before I say goodbye, at least until later tonight, I know we're already up to 20 minutes here, is if the Steelers can win tonight, I actually think there's a decent chance that they can win a home playoff game next week. In fact, I think they might actually have a better chance of winning that home playoff game, probably against the Houston Texans, at home against a warm weather opponent with a quarterback that has really traditionally and historically struggled in the cold, CJ Stroud. And because they get DK Metcalf back next week as well, than they do playing against the Baltimore Ravens tonight with a kick-ass run game, with Lamar Jackson coming back apparently as healthy as he's been, without DK Metcalf. Like, tonight is the test for the Pittsburgh Steelers, in my opinion, guys, because I think if the Steelers can win tonight, I think they can win next week and win that first playoff game potentially. It's certainly, I think that certainly gives the best chance of them winning a playoff game in many years. And then if they can win one playoff game, you know what I always say, guys, if you can win one playoff game, you can win multiple, especially if you're playing against warm weather opponents, stuff like that. You have DK Metcalf, Aaron Rodgers is playing at a high level, this defense is playing at a high level. If those things are all happening and all those things are still possible, if you can win this game, I think the Steelers could make some noise in the AFC playoffs. I know it doesn't feel that way coming off a loss to a then 3-win football team in the Cleveland Browns, but telling you, man, if you can find a way to win tonight, I think that could kickstart a last-minute run here from the black and gold that could be very entertaining for us. But tonight's going to be the tough one, in my opinion. Hopefully the Steelers can pull it out. Again, Ponzi and I will be live on this channel later today, starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, about 2 hours of pregame coverage, then live play-by-play and game analysis, followed by post-game reaction. We're expecting about 200,000 people to be watching the Steelers Talk Watch Party tonight, guys. If you want to join our party tonight, you want to watch this game with us, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Enjoy your NFL Sunday, and we'll see you guys later tonight.